up on Business Spotlight. Farming and food security high on government's agenda. Fire safety as Johannesburg prepares for winter. And Soweto celebrates Africa Month. Although the city of Johannesburg is making good progress in developing the corridors of freedom, spatial and economic inequality continue to impact citizens' ability to participate in the urban economy and therefore on their ability to access food. The city is focusing on actively supporting and providing incentives for small-scale growers to provide a steady support of fresh produce from the urban food system and improve access to markets. This farming cooperative in Eikenhof is one project that is helping the city realize the right to food. The farm is home to 35 cooperatives producing vegetables, grains and livestock under the Food Resilience Program, which is run by the city's Department of Health and Social Development.
The food security initiative is important for the city of Johannesburg. We have done a study that indicates that of the 20% or so of the people of Johannesburg who are poor, 42% are estimated to be food insecure, meaning that we've got a significant number of people that go without a meal for at least 3 days in a month. And this initiative is about getting local community cooperatives to produce both for themselves but to also on-sell to supermarkets, to our fresh produce market and so on. And this is really about addressing the food security challenges in our city. But it's also about bringing production closer to where consumption happens, because food security is also about pricing. So if you're able to have production closer to distribution and sale, you're able to reduce the price and reduce the pressure on logistics. So when we look at food security, we look at it in a comprehensive way in the city of Joburg.
Some of the produce from this farm is already being sold at the fresh produce market in City Deep. Other cooperatives are supplying supermarkets such as Boxer and Pick n Pay. The CNBC Africa team chatted to some of the experts at this week's food security seminar about the future of food security in Southern Africa.
Food security is, as I say, it's not simply an issue of production. It is very central to food security is economic growth, and not just economic growth in terms of overall GDP growth, but it has to be inclusive growth. It has to be growth that filters right down to the smallholder and lifts them. And that means growth that is associated with investment in agriculture, it's investment in social protection measures at a local level, and it's growth that is associated with better farming practices. So the economic component is very strong, but what we're also seeing is that income growth has resulted in a change in the way people eat, which has meant that South Africa and the region is seeing this double burden of malnutrition. We have unacceptably high numbers of food insecure families, but alongside that we've got growing obesity and non-communicable diseases, so we have this double health burden associated with food production. We also then obviously have the associated environmental issues, which is the degradation in the resource base. About 65% of our soils are considered severely degraded. You'll know that we've just come through the worst El Niño event in human history, and that has meant that we've had the driest summer planting seasons since about 1981 in most of the Southern African region, and the result of that is a massive shock to the production system and an impact to the resilience of that system that we'll continue to feel for a long time. And as climate change escalates, we're really facing a very critical time in terms of production, food production in the region. I think for us as an environmental organization, what we're arguing for is agroecological approach to farming. So farming where you're building the soils, you're using efficient and precision farming methods, so as little water as possible, as little chemicals as possible, and really farming in a way that's friendly to nature. But it doesn't actually end there. It's also about looking through the full supply chain, addressing the issue of waste. We know that here in South Africa we estimate that we waste about a third of our food. So about a third of the food that's produced is never actually consumed. So we need to address that. In fact, you know, it's unimaginable what shifts we could have just by addressing that waste issue. And it's an issue of access. You know, how do we produce enough food for the people of the region, but for predominantly economic reasons, they're not able to access that food. So it's also about addressing those inequality issues. It's about better cross-regional trade. It's about understanding how we define food security at a regional level and water and energy security, so that what we are best suited for in South Africa we do here, but where, for instance, in Zimbabwe, where they get up to 4 times more productivity off their soils, you know, perhaps Zimbabwe is a better place for growing maize and other staples, and we redefine who does what.
As infrastructure develops and economic opportunity within cities increases, people tend to migrate away from farming towards these opportunities.
Look, I think it does change where you are around the country. What we have found, unfortunately, within some of the more urban areas around the country is that when kids come out of school, you know, first and foremost they want to be rappers and rock stars, followed by lawyers, doctors, accountants, and for some reason farmers are bumped down the list. I do think though that it's changing. The perceptions around agriculture and how cool agriculture is definitely changing quite rapidly. In Johannesburg, for example, we have the EduPlant program as one of the programs. It's a Woolworths funded initiative, and that's where we actually look to go into schools and change the perceptions around agriculture. Focusing specifically on permaculture, organic, holistic agriculture, and we find that especially younger children are very receptive to this. So there are some exciting things that are happening in that respect.
As winter sets in Johannesburg, families are turning on the heaters for much needed warmth. An increase of fire incidents is seen in winter, so the city's emergency management services has embarked on a fire safety awareness campaign, particularly targeted at informal settlements.
We've realized that we have increase of fire incidences in informal settlement, and then also the people who get hurt in those areas are the young people, sometimes are the kids. For example, like here in Orange Farm, some couple of months back, we lost some people that lost their life as a result of fire incidences.
The campaign is mainly targeted at schools, children and the elderly who are most vulnerable.
We need to instill this from the early age so that as they grow, they must know to say how to attend to this kind of situations. And then because we are heading for a world base where we will make sure to say each and every household is educated around that, and we make sure to say each and every household, at least one in that house, we've got somebody who's been trained in terms of the basics, so that in case of anything happens, he knows what to do to call correct numbers, he knows what to do in case of what we come across in terms of incident. You should remember, we are dealing with fire and life safety. We cover it broadly, we are not focusing only around fire.
In the animal kingdom, there's an animal called a rhino. Do you know the rhino?
Reginald the rhinoceros was launched in Orange Farm as the fire safety mascot. Legend has it that the rhino guards its food reservoirs jealously. If fire threatened the herbivore's stash of plants, the rhino would rush in and stomp out the flames. Campaigns such as this has shown an improvement in fire safety.
Our strategy moving forward, we said this is the first kind of event, let's say, implemented in this kind of a format. This model now, we've tested it, it works, is to take this model from here, function it and take it to other areas as well, using the very same strategy, but we just enhance it.
If ever there was a symbol of unity to commemorate Africa Month, this was it. A Nigerian group performing a traditional South African song. The Beulah Quartet was taught by the leader of Grammy Award-winning group Ladysmith Black Mambazo. This was an African Month colloquium on literature, hosted at the Soweto Theatre, south of Johannesburg. One of the biggest names there was also from Nigeria, the recipient of Africa's first Nobel Prize for Literature, Professor Wole Soyinka.
Listen more often to things rather than beings. Hear the fire's voice, hear the voice of water. In the wind, hear the sobbing of the trees. It is our forefathers breathing.
One of the experts on literature there spoke of the great man's work,
but in which a sense of African solidarity remains intact. In his memoirs, his language is of someone for him. This sense is a matter of identification with the details of others' lives, rather than recognition of something antecedently assured. In his homecoming memoirs, he tried to show how a loathing for cruelty, the cruelty of Abasha, for instance, a sense that it is the worst thing we do to each other.
Many questions were posed to the South African Minister of Arts and Culture, including why there is no African curriculum in schools.
The issue of history and the African historic curriculum, I can say here that already the Department of Basic Education, which we have already engaged, are in the process of ensuring that there's compulsory history education. I've made the similar points we have made, that how we read history and how we understood history, it's mainly foreign history, not African.
The evening ended with sounds from African songstress Simpiwe Dana